Hi, and welcome to the Law Center videocast. I am your host and founder of the Law Center, Larry DeMarco. Thank you for joining us this evening. We go live on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., so please join us in the chat room so you can interact with other viewers in real time. I have another special guest for my videocast this evening. We are here with Dr. Colleen Murray. Dr. Murray is a licensed practicing counselor and owner of Victor's Crown Christian Counseling Center in St. Robert, Missouri, where she specializes in working with families experiencing high conflict divorce and parental alienation. Dr. Murray is also an adjunct professor at Drury University. She's also an expert witness and regularly testifies in high conflict divorce and parental alienation cases. And she teaches continuing education conferences for family law attorneys and judges. Dr. Murray, thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate being asked to be here.
So tell us, why are you so passionate about your work and the work you do with helping people who suffer from parental alienation?
Sure, and thank you for that great question. I am really passionate about children. My dissertation was in domestic violence and domestic abuse and how it affects children. And the first time I ever saw a parental alienation case in my office, it was really profoundly disturbing to me. And the reason why was because I had worked for so many years in domestic violence shelters and with foster care children. And I had never seen the reaction that I saw in an alienated child. In fact, from the time I had started my undergrad work in 1993 and until I graduated, after taking a 10-year break to be in the military, when I graduated with my doctorate in 2016, I hadn't even heard one time about parental alienation. So as I saw this child who had never had any abuse by the targeted parent, had, for all intents and purposes, a great relationship with this parent. When I saw the agony that was manifested, the psychological agony that was manifested physically in them reeling on the ground and rocking and crying and screaming, it literally broke my heart for this child. And as I dug more into it and I got mentored by Amy Baker, I started to see how awful this was. It didn't really affect my life. Personally, I have told my story about my custody case. There was a little bit of alienation that started to happen, but it was really nipped in the bud and I didn't recognize it because I didn't know what it was. But to see the severe effects of alienation, it really just tore at my heart. And so the reason why I'm so dedicated to it and so involved in it is because I really fear for the next generation of children.
Doctor, you were trained in trauma. Can you compare and contrast the effects that a domestic violence victim has to the trauma and effect a parental alienation victim has?
Sure. In my work, one of the things that I like to do is I like to work with children in a free form of creative therapy. And one of those forms is to do sand tray with them. It really gives me an insight into what they're thinking. Now, I don't use it for any type of assessment in the parental alienation cases, but I use it as a glimpse into how they feel. And the violence that shows up in these trays and the disorganization and the feeling of abandonment look very similar to trays that I've seen done by children that are in domestic violence shelters. Now, the difference that I see is the way that the child interacts with the targeted parent or the quote unquote abusive parent. In what I've seen in foster care children and in domestic violence shelters is when the abusive parent shows up. And now these are abusive parents that have, Children's Division has investigated, or there have been multiple arrests. So there's a lot of evidence to prove that they are abusive. The child begs for their attention, almost wanting them to take them home with them. They do everything they can to get in front of them and communicate with them and attach with them. What I see in alienation cases where there hasn't been any children's division investigations, or they have been and they've been found unfounded. There's been no long history of domestic violence or abuse until after the separation, and all those have come back inconclusive or not, they don't have enough evidence. In those cases, I see the children pulling back from the parent, not wanting to get near the parent, having these physical reactions to the parent being in their space that I don't see, or I didn't see in children who've had domestic violence perpetrated on them and it has been confirmed.
And the important point is that we can distinguish between the estranged children and alienated children because of this difference, contrary to what the detractors of parental alienation theorists is, they try and suggest that we don't tell the difference or can't tell the difference, but there's this distinct difference in behavior between an alienated child and abused child. So we can, in fact, tell the difference.
Sure. And Amy Baker did some great research on that too. So there's also empirical research that shows that this is not just a phenomena that one might see in their office and second guess it, but this is a phenomena that's been proven with some empirical research.
So tell us about your company, Victor Crown Christian Counseling Center.
Sure. So Victor's Crown Christian Counseling Center was opened in 2014. And originally I thought that I was going to be working with domestic violence shelters and children who had been through some type of trauma, rape or physical abuse, something like this. And so that was our mission. That was our statement. That's where I was going to be happy working for the rest of my life. And then in walked a case of parental alienation, and that just changed the whole dynamic of our customer base, but not the dynamic of our mission statement, interestingly enough, because again, we saw the same type of behaviors that were pretty organic to domestic violence, because at the core of parental alienation is emotional abuse, which is part of the domestic violence dialogue, right? So we changed our clientele, and so we work a lot with high conflict custody, high conflict divorce cases. We get a lot referred to us from the local courts. I've had cases all over, literally all over the nation, and so I do a lot of we do a lot of training, and I have an intern that I'm working with her to get her up to speed so that she can start to take over some of the other cases that I have. Because we really, as sad as this is, really have too many cases. And we really saw an uptick after COVID. So I operate here out of St. Robert, Missouri, and we have a great facility. It's 1,300 square feet of nothing but peace and relaxation. And we have 5 acres outside where clients really enjoy just sitting. We have it opens up into the Gasconade River Valley. And so clients really enjoy the view and the quiet and the peacefulness. And it really is very tranquil to do the therapy outside.
Great. Dr. Murray, when we spoke earlier, you discussed parallel parenting. How is that different from co-parenting, and how do you use it?
Sure. I do a lot of co-parenting coaching, and there are 2 types of co-parenting. There's cooperative co-parenting, which everybody wishes that everybody would do. And that's where we all get along and we share information and we go to basketball games and we have Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving together, and we're super cooperative. If you have to work late and I get off early, I pick up the kid and we coordinate that, and it's beautiful. But in high conflict cases, that isn't available to a lot of my clients. And sometimes it's not available ever. And so in those cases, there's parallel co-parenting. And if you think back to your days in school between 6th and 8th grade when you took geometry, and remember the 2 parallel lines that exist on the same plane but never intersect, that's what parallel co-parenting is. And that's where what happens at your house happens at your house, what happens at my house happens at my house. We don't have to agree on any scheduling or anything like this. We strictly go by the co-parenting or the whatever our parenting plan says. We don't deviate from it. We usually need a mediator to help us agree on the bigger things, but we try to avoid those at all costs. We make appointments on our time, not on the other parent's time. So it's a lot of individualization. However, it's really not good for long term. And the reason why that is because any child, whether you're married or divorced or separated or whatever, any child is going to try and triangulate their parents, intentionally or not intentionally. I remember when my kids were young, they would come and say, "Hey, Mom, can I go?" And I'd be like, "Sure." And then my husband would show up and say, "Hey, where's our son or where's our daughter?" I'd be like, "Oh, I said that they could go somewhere else." And so they weren't trying to make us upset. They weren't trying to, do anything bad. Kids just want what they want when they want it. And kids who come from divorced homes, whose parents parallel co-parent, they find that even easier because they know that the parents are never going to call each other. They're never going to check up. They're never going to follow the backstory. So if the child comes to the parent and says, "Hey, I want to go to dad's tonight," great, go to dad's. If the kid says, "Hey, I'm going to mom's tonight," great, go to mom's. And they know that they're not going to call. And that has happened a couple of times. And the child has ended up getting in trouble because they're not where they're supposed to be, doing things they're not supposed to be doing.
So why has parallel parenting taken so long to catch on in the courts? I confess that I think researching you is the first that I saw the term, but yet I went through 10 years of a contentious high conflict separation. And so are courts slow to pick this up, and why?
Well, I'd like to take credit for coining it, but I'm not. It's kind of a term that's used a lot in people that do co-parenting coaching or do family therapy. But I think the reason why the courts might be a little behind on that is because the courts are more idealistic. And so they have a more idealistic idea of how parents can get together. Perhaps you've seen this phenomena of this idealism is when a hotly contested case is in the courtroom and the judge looks at the two and he says, "I want you to go out into the lobby and I want you to work this out," which is nearly impossible, right? Because if they could do that, they probably wouldn't be there. They probably wouldn't have spent those money on those lawyers, right? So yeah, I think there's this idealism about how this should go. And I think that comes from their heart. I think that comes from the judges' hearts of wanting that to be that way, because I think they understand what can happen when parents fight a lot. But I also think that the reason why they're late coming to the table on some of these ideas is they're just not trained in those areas. If you were to come to me and talk to me about some legal aspect, like I wouldn't know anything about it. And so you'd have to train me. And because this is more of a therapy or coaching aspect, they have to be trained. We each should be a student of our own professions, but it's hard to be a student of everybody's profession. So there has to be a lot of collaboration between the professions that meet each other in the courts, the lawyers and the counselors. Instead of an us against them, there needs to be this lot of collaboration because it's really about the family leaving the courtroom whole or more whole than they came in. Because let's face it, after everybody leaves, they're going to be stuck there trying to parent or co-parent their children. And if they leave more broken than when they came in, that doesn't really serve the child very well.
I understand that you speak at continuing education conferences for family law attorneys and judges. So is this part of your curriculum, this parallel parenting? Do you find that you need to speak about this to educate the legal profession about the need for parallel parenting?
It is part of what I talk about, and educating them on some basic principles of parental alienation and high conflict, and a lot of the research that goes into what happens, what are the consequences if we don't get this right. And in fact, funny story, right before COVID kicked off, the area that I work in was given a grant. The courts were given a grant, and I was to teach co-parenting classes, and then COVID happened, and so we only ever got one class in. So good story though. That case was hotly contested, and they were about to get divorced. And after after the co-parenting coaching and the parallel co-parenting, they actually stopped the divorce and they're still together now.
Wow. One of the good rare ones.
Yes.
So what do you find the court is receptive to or needs to hear or wants to hear more of? Do you find that the judges or the legal community is open to learning about parental alienation, notwithstanding the disinformation campaign?
I find that a lot of times just the word parental alienation can become like a lightning rod. But what I find is when I craft the discussion or the conversation in more terms that they can relate to, such as domestic violence, child abuse, and then marry it up with something they're familiar with, like juvenile court, that tends to really resonate with the judges because it seems to be more organic to them. I was worked for Children's Division for a little bit as a case manager. I would go into court and we would listen to the investigators and then the case managers, and we would make, based on our testimony and the judge's discernment, we'd make judgments about taking kids away or leaving them with the parent and what type of rehabilitation has to happen for the reunification. And all that seems really great. But for some reason, when you go to family court, that same discussion about should a child stay with an abuser, what should be the rehabilitation, how should the reunification look? On the stand, I get asked questions like, do you think it will harm them to remove the child from the parent? And I find that a really odd question because nobody ever asked me that when I was in juvenile court and we were talking about abuse. So I just find it very interesting to go from one to the other. I think that judges in general are open to the idea, but I think the conversation has to be put in a way that they can see it and understand it as not being something separate, but something that they're familiar with because it's abuse.
And have you found that this has been a challenge in getting the judges to see, and lawyers for that matter, that parental alienation is child abuse?
Not ever since I started recrafting the discussion to something that they're really familiar with. Sometimes it's all about position of concept, right? So if I take a discussion and I move it out of a position of concept that you're used to, it may seem foreign to you. But as soon as I take those same tenets and put it into something organic to you, it totally makes sense, right? So I'm thinking about, I remember one time I saw my neighbor and he was talking to me for about 10 minutes. And then I pulled into that was early in the day, I pulled into my driveway later on in the day and he looked at me and he said, "You didn't recognize me at all." And I said, "You were totally out of context for me." Because I had never seen him outside of his yard where he worked. He was in the military, where he worked in the military. I had never seen him, so I didn't recognize him at all. So again, it's that idea of taking something out of some place that you're used to seeing it and transferring it into a different place, and sometimes you don't recognize it.
Who has been one of your biggest influences?
Gosh, I would have to say there's several in different areas, but I would have to say my biggest influence would be Amy Baker. And here's why. When I first saw this case in my office, I quickly Googled child screaming, not wanting to see parent, and up popped this name that I had never seen before, and it said parental alienation. And I just started ordering every book, reading every piece of material I could on it. And I started calling authors of these books and emailing them, looking for a mentor. And Amy Baker called me back. And so she really worked with me for pretty solidly every month or every 3 weeks for 2 years. And she really, put the foundational pieces there for me. So I would say in that arena, it would be her.
Very good. Thank you. She's been helpful to me too. She, when I said I wanted to help promote the theory because I felt that it was one of the worst, well, best kept secrets, but a horrible secret to keep. She was very receptive in drafting scripts for the Law Center YouTube channel to help spread awareness of parental alienation. I applaud her as well. What do you feel has been your biggest accomplishment?
Oh, my biggest accomplishment. I would say that my biggest accomplishments, and I share this with my husband a lot, my biggest accomplishments is when two co-parents come in here that are ready to just rip each other's jugulars out, and they leave, and their children are happy and being able to parent them. That really is my biggest accomplishment, is when I'm able to work with parents and they're able to see past the flaws and the hurt and the pain of each other and really focus on their children. Now, does that happen all the time? No. Has it happened in some pretty high conflict cases that I didn't think were going to work out? Yeah, it has, surprisingly. But it takes a lot of work. I work hard with other therapists to do the individual therapy. And I'm just a real big team player. So if I'm going to say what's my biggest accomplishment, I would say it's that, but really it's a team of us that work together to make that happen.
What are some of your biggest challenges in getting people who are in a high conflict situation to work together?
The biggest challenge is getting them to see the value. So usually the first session that I have with them is just sharing all of the research, a lot of Dr. Wallerstein and Dr. Baker, and getting them to see that why this is important, like what's going to happen to their child. Now, some of your patrons that are listening, they're probably going to say, well, in a really aggressive alienator, right? In a really aggressive alienator that has a personality disorder and lacks empathy, we're not going to get very far. But with somebody who's an aggressive alienator, because they're bent on revenge, they can soften because they don't lack empathy. They're just bent on revenge in that moment. But if they can see how it's going to affect their children, I literally had a child in here one day, literally banging their head on the floor and rocking. And I could, and I showed the video to the parents and stressed to them, this is what you are doing, to get them to see how bad this is going to be for their kid. Now, I don't have a magic wand or a crystal ball, but there's been times when I've told the parent, this was going to happen. And they go, well, those are just statistics. And, they're pretty adamant that they're going to be right because they obviously have a personality disorder and they have no empathy for their child. And the child has ended up exactly where I told them they were going to be. Now, it's not a miracle that I could do that. It's statistics and it's research that shows that this is what's going to happen. So it really isn't a surprise to me when it happens. But
Sure.
The biggest challenge is getting the parents to getting them to really see their children, that this isn't about them. This isn't about their ex. This is about their child. And it's their responsibility, getting them to understand that it's their responsibility to help get their child to adulthood, and that their child can be injured by the things that they do or don't do.
And you get patients that come both on their own initiative and also people who are court ordered. What's the ratio of each? And do you notice a difference between the two groups?
Yeah, so I do get people that come on their own. It's usually the targeted parent that will come on their own, and they'll start taking some co-parenting coaching or parenting coaching. And then again, if it's not a severely alienated case where the alienator has a personality disorder, if it's not that, then sometimes we can talk to the parent, the alienating parent, and talk to them and get them to come too. And usually that would be the targeted parent who does that after they've had some co-parenting coaching and some communication, and they kind of parenting techniques, and they kind of get the idea of how to talk to them. Those that's a real low percentage. That's probably 1 or 2% of my work. The 80% of my work is court ordered. So, and those, we do have a high here at Victor's Crown. We do have a high percentage of cases that do end positively. But just like every other person that works with these cases, some of the parents they just really don't care. They just really want to, enact some pain onto the other parent, and their child just becomes cannon fodder for that.
It's unfortunate when that happens. So where can people go to learn more about you and your company?
Sure. They can go to www.victors-crown.com. They can also go to Family Access. I have a page on there. And those are the two places where they can find out information about me. And while I'm on that, I just wanted to make a quick plug for some upcoming things that I'm going to be doing. I am going to be moderating the conference in September 9th through 11th in Raleigh, Durham for Family Access. And we have a star-studded lineup. So if any of you are interested in that, I highly encourage you to go to the Family Access website and check that out. You are going to be really, really just delighted to be there. It's going to be in Raleigh, Durham, which I love North Carolina. So that's going to be fantastic. And it's a star-studded lineup. We got Bill Eddy, and we got Dr. Bill Burnett, and who else is going to be there? Megan from High Conflict Institute's going to be there, and Mark Mosk is going to be there. It is just a lineup. So I want to just encourage you to go there. And I'm sorry for anybody's name I couldn't remember right now.
Sure. There's the whole, correct me if I'm wrong, the whole program is posted at Family Access under the More tab where people can go and see. But so my understanding is that it's not just for professionals, it's really for parents as well. Is that correct?
Yes, Family Access's mission is not just to educate the professionals, but more of the mission is to help support and educate the families of alienation that are experiencing it. And so marrying up information with the professionals, giving professionals information, and marrying up the two different populations really helps to again build this team idea, and it really helps the people to meet the professionals and feel their heart and know that they're not just in this for the money. They're in this because they believe in the mission and they think it's important.
And you will be moderating several panels, if I'm not mistaken. You actually are one of a co-moderator or presenter or moderator.
Yes. So Elaine will be introducing some, I'll be introducing some, and then I will be hosting the Q&A that we'll have at several times during the conference.
So for the viewers, you can also go to the description portion of the video where you can learn more about Dr. Murray and also this upcoming conference and also annual conferences that Family Access puts on wherever location. So Dr. Murray, I will leave it there. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me.
We have been here with Dr. Colleen Murray, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. We'll be broadcasting live on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., where you can interact with other guests while watching the video cast together. Please also catch other informational legal videos on my channel, especially the self-help playlist for self-represented litigants in family court. Please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you can be notified when videos go live, and share the videos with your contact list and social media friends. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time. Bye for now.